How do we feel about this one? Dolphins coming off a win. What's your matchup that matters here?
I'm going trenches here because I'm going the Dolphins D line against the Houston O line. Houston O line 66.6 overall offensive grade, which ranks 26th in the league right now, not doing CJ Stroud a whole lot of favors. They do have a 73.0 pass blocking grade, which ranks 15th. So they're marginally better in pass blocking rather than just overall grade. But then you look at a guy like Chalk Robinson and top five in pass rush win percentage. He leads the Dolphins in pressures. That is something where, I mean, you have the potential to be a game wrecker if you're Chop Robinson and prevent this Texans offense, which we've seen show flashes this season of quite a bit of productivity, especially now that you have Nico Collins and Tank Dell and the full availability of your receiving arsenal for other than Stephon Diggs for CJ Stroud. I just think you need to get to him, and you might be able to when it comes to this Houston O line.
When it comes to my matchup that matters specifically, the Tyreek Hill versus Derek Stingley Jr. one is going to be a fun one because I think these are two of the most talented, skilled position players in the NFL that could be going up against each other. I think Derek Stingley has elevated himself into one hell of a football player and somebody who's been playing a little bit hot and cold lately, but man, you go back to, I'm just looking at his grades right now. Week 10 against the Lions, 88.4 coverage grade. The next week against the Cowboys, 83.1. Against the Titans, a little bit lower, is a 48.6, not great. But then against the Jaguars in week 13, before they had their bye week, 67.5. He's got a 69.6 overall coverage grade this season. He's got all the ability to be able to play against some of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And when you look at Tyreek Hill, he had over 100 yards receiving in last week's win over the Jets. That was the first time he had over 100 yards receiving since September. We've been on this show and we've been talking about plus factors, and I've brought up a couple of times Tyreek Hill's got to be that plus factor, and he really just has not been the way that we know Tyreek Hill can. It looked a lot closer to the Tyreek Hill we are used to seeing this past week against the Jets, and I'm wondering if we get that same player against a better Houston Texans secondary, all due respect to the Jets. I mean, they're banged up. Sauce Gardner wasn't in that game. They were playing some backups. It hasn't been good for the Jets secondary this season. Stingley Jr., though, specifically, as somebody who has the ability to play shadow coverage, has the ability to move around the formation with Tyreek Hill. I don't know if that's super wise. You don't want to do that too often because I think Tyreek Hill is going to get better at basically any corner in the NFL. But how they fare, I think, is going to go a long way when it's strength on strength like that. Who's your plus factor?
That goes actually right into my plus factor because my plus factor is basically just which team gets more out of their top wide receiver. Is it going to be Tyreek? Are you going to get the game that you got against the New York Jets and see him be more of that plus factor that we know he can be? Or are you going to see what Nico Collins can be to CJ Stroud, which means a lot? Nico Collins leads all wide receivers in overall receiving grade this year, 92.5. Sixth in yards per reception, with 18.1 average. He's second in threat percentage. He's sandwiched right between Puka and Cooper Kupp with 29.5% threat percentage. So this is the guy that, we saw what his absence meant to CJ Stroud and meant to this offense and how they just weren't able to get a lot of stuff going. CJ Stroud not as comfortable whatsoever, not having the availability of both Nico and Tank. He's going to have that again. And are the Houston Texans going to get that, productivity out of their offense with Nico Collins in there? Or is it the Miami Dolphins that are going to get the productivity that we know that they're capable of with Tyreek Hill? I think whoever goes off more is the team that's going to win.
My plus factor here is Teron Armstead, the offensive tackle for the Miami Dolphins, simply because he only played in 5 snaps last week and Patrick Paul had to come in. Yeah. And from what I've read, obviously it's only Wednesday, Mike McDaniel said it's nothing like major. He's been dealing with a knee thing throughout the season.
He's always dealing with something.
Right, and he just needs rest. Okay, well, are you going to put him out there against, Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson and put is a 70% Teron Armstead better than Patrick Paul? I don't know is the question.
Right.
And Lamb's been pretty good on the other side of things, and so you got some faith there that he could hold up to the offensive tackle spot. But, whether it is a 60% Teron Armstead or a guy like Patrick Paul in a rookie going up against some really good pass rushers, I think that's going to be a plus factor here is whether or not Teron Armstead can play. And if he can, what percentage is he playing at? Because as much as you might have faith in Patrick Paul long-term, I mean, you don't want him out there in this game. You don't want him out there to face those two duos of edge rushers. They, I believe, still have the most sacks and most pressures of any defensive end duo in the NFL. So these guys have been able to get after it all season long. They're experienced, and it's a defensive line that is very comfortable and confident in how they attack the pocket. So Teron Armstead, to me, is the big plus factor, because if he's not out there, I'd be a little bit worried, because Tua gets the ball out of his hands pretty quickly. Obviously, that's advantageous to this, but him playing clean, man, Tua is so good when he's playing clean, when this offense is on schedule. And so you want to do that as much as possible. Teron Armstead is going to go a long way into making that happen. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below. So if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.